Rental rates are starting to drop across the US housing market, and this is yet another sign of the 2022 housing crash coming to life. This is especially true in a housing market like Northport, Sarasota, Florida. We can see here with data from the Reventure Consulting May 2022 newsletter that rent in Northport, Sarasota exploded throughout 2020-2021, yet over the last 4 months, look at this folks, rent has actually gone down by about 4%. And rent going down is a big problem for the Northport, Sarasota housing market, or any housing market in America where rent is going down. I'm going to show you some of those cities later in this video, because if rent is going down, that means that most notably investors are going to have big problems. A lot of the big institutional real estate investors that bought homes at exorbitant prices over the last year did so because they were confident they could jack up the rent. But now those same real estate investors who bought all those homes over the last year or two are now having difficulty increasing the rent. And I believe this is going to lead to a mass wave of investor panic selling, particularly in markets where rents are flatlining or going down. The counties in red are the ones where over the last 6 months, rental rates have either flatlined or started to go down. You can see a big cluster of these markets is in the Pacific Coast or the Pacific Northwest of America. In most of the counties around the Seattle and Bremerton metro areas, we've seen rent go down in the last 6 months. Meanwhile, across Multnomah and Clackamas County in Portland, rent has gone down, as it has in Eugene, Oregon, Reno, Nevada, and Sacramento, California. Moving even further southeast, we can see rent in Las Vegas has gone down over the last couple months. And so these markets I just discussed in the Pacific Northwest, in Northern California, in Vegas, could have big problems ahead because investors are going to panic sell, and in addition, lowering rental rates are an indication that maybe the underlying housing demand in these markets isn't as strong as people thought. Now, to be clear, rent isn't stagnating everywhere. If we go to a market like Dallas, we can see pretty much all of the counties have positive rent growth by 4 to 6% over the last 6 months. Meanwhile, in Florida, we also see a lot of blue on this map, which means rent growth has gone up a lot in Miami-Dade, in Broward County, to the center of Florida in Orlando, as well as to a place like Gainesville. And these regional differences highlight the importance of you understanding your local housing market. Rather than just focusing on national indicators of home prices and rents, you need to be focusing on what's going on in your backyard specifically. Because if we zoom back to Vegas for a second, we can understand that flatlining rent is a big problem. Why? Because in the fourth quarter of 2021, nearly 30% of all the homes in Vegas were purchased by an investor, according to data from Redfin. So these investors who purchased the homes in Vegas at all-time high prices were expecting to be able to jack up the rent, and they're having some trouble doing that over the last 3 to 6 months, which is a sign that I think many of these investors could be forced to liquidate their properties at some point later this year in a market like Vegas. And the issue in Vegas, as well as more broadly in the housing market, is that investors made a big bet. They said that the rent increases we saw in the middle to the end of 2021 were just the sign of things to come, and that we were going to see even bigger rent increases going forward in 2022 and 2023 due to inflation. However, that bet is starting to look pretty bad right now, because when you take a look at the underlying fundamentals, it becomes very evident that people across America just can't afford it. You can see here the green line is showing that the average hourly wage in America is up by about 30% over the last 8 years, according to data from the BLS. Meanwhile, the typical rent in America is up by 50%, while the typical home price is up by 80%. So clearly there's two disconnects here. The first disconnect is between wages and rents. Over the last year or two, rents have gone way higher than wages, which is not a sustainable situation. It suggests that either wages need to go up or rents need to go down. And the fact that you're seeing rent already stagnate in quite a few markets is a sign, in my opinion, that rents are going to go down. But there's another disconnect that you need to pay attention to here, and that's between rents and home values. Home values are up way higher than rents, which is a sign that, investors are accepting lower returns to buy homes. It's a sign that it's becoming more attractive financially to rent. And so at some point, you're going to need to see convergence between these lines as well. And that convergence is most easily going to come from home values going and crashing down closer to the levels of where rents and wages are. And so a lot of those people, those investors especially, who are hanging their hat on the fact that the rent was going up and that was a sign that the US housing market wasn't in a bubble, well, those people are going to be in for a world of pain over the next couple months, over the next year, as we see rent growth continue to moderate and continue to go down in certain cities, especially considering the fact that we're about to see a huge deluge of new apartment and rental buildings delivered into the US housing market. And I'm not joking about this, guys. Take a look at this. Data from the US Census Bureau is showing that there's nearly 800,000 multifamily and apartment properties currently actively under construction. That is by far the highest level over the last 40 years. And these units, which have been delayed maybe during the pandemic, maybe they were supposed to be delivered in 2021 and now they're going to be delivered in 2022. When they hit the market later this year, it's going to push those rental rates down even further, and it's going to cause even more problems for real estate investors who are banking on continued rent growth. And overall, the inevitable crash in the rental market, as well as the broader housing market, highlights the importance where if you're an investor, you should be looking at markets where there's already high cash flows and high rental yields. And looking at the Reventure Consulting May 2022 newsletter, which I just released to my channel members, we can see here are the top rental yield markets in America. These are the best places in America for investors to buy for cash flow. Somewhere like El Paso, Texas, where you get 9% rental yield cash flow right out of the box based on how rents compare to home prices. Toledo, Ohio, Jackson, Mississippi, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Memphis, Tennessee. Interestingly, Miami, the rents are so high that even though home prices have gone up, the rents have gone up by even more, so the rental yields are still very good. Places you want to avoid are the next page in the Reventure newsletter, the rental yield trailers. These are the markets where you get the lowest amount of rent day one for your purchase price. You can see, San Jose, San Francisco, Salt Lake City, Seattle, Provo, Denver, Austin, LA, San Diego, Portland, Ogden, Boise, 4% or lower rental yields in these markets. So if you're an investor and you buy in any of these markets, you're basically assuming that you can grow your rent a lot into the future to make your investment profitable, which is not a good assumption in today's market. If you're someone who would like to learn more about this rental rate data and how it impacts the US housing market, make sure to hit the join button below, become a channel member for Reventure Consulting. You get access to this newsletter, which I just showed you. The new issue just came out today. You also get access to an exclusive members only video, which also just came out today. I'll have a link to it in the description. So if you're someone who's hungry for even more data in the US housing market, hit the join button below, become a channel member, and get access to all of this great data. And if you're not interested in becoming a member, that's fine too. Just make sure to smash that like button to show your support for this channel. And to also let me know in the comments below, what are you seeing as far as rent in your markets? Are you seeing price cuts on rentals start to hit? I've been tracking some exclusive data where I am seeing that in certain markets, but I want to know what you are seeing in your backyard. So let me know in the comments below.